Welcome to the Sherry Welsh Coaching Podcast. This is Phil Johnson, and I'm here today with leadership coach and author Sherry Welsh of sherrywelsh.com. Sherry coaches individuals privately, and she also works with groups within companies. And you can get a copy of her book, which is titled Slowing Down: Unexpected Ways to Thrive as a Female Leader, from any major book retailer. Sherry, thanks for being with us today.
Hi, Phil. Great to be here.
So, Sherry, in the podcasts that we did on the trust model, your trust model that you've developed, one aspect of the trust model that we talked about is communication. And we talked about communication involving asking for what you want. And one other aspect of communication that we touched on but didn't develop in detail is a matter of listening. And when we say listening in this context, we're not talking about passive listening, like listening to background music. We're talking about listening with a purpose, for the purpose of effective communication, the purpose of keeping things moving forward. So in this podcast, we're going to get into this kind of listening. And I wonder if you could give us a bit of a broader introduction to this matter.
Sure. So when I'm working with groups in different team building environments and team dynamic coaching situations, this topic comes up quite often. And people want to know, what can they do to listen better? And what can they do to have others listen to them better, right? Which is even more interesting. And so what I found is there's different levels of listening. And in the energy leadership work that I do, there's very objective listening, where you're listening just for a couple words and then you're done. And then you think you know what they're going to say and you just answer for them or finish their sentence for them. There's then subjective listening, which has a bit more depth to it. And it's listening more for a little bit the subject and a little bit more nuance behind it, but it's still not full what we would call level 6 listening, which is really intuitive listening. And that level 6 listening is extremely powerful in any relationship or interaction you're having, both personally and professionally.
So, Sherry, it's been a while since we talked about level 6 in detail. I wonder if, before you get into level 6 listening, if you could just remind us a little bit of what level 6 is and what that looks like.
Sure. So level 6 from the energy leadership 7 levels of leadership is that level of intuition, of inner wisdom, of sheer connection with others, of being in sync with others in such a way that you just feel like you're in rhythm with each other, that you don't have any bias going on, that you truly see everyone as equals. And regardless of any titles or any different positions, everyone is in it together. Everyone is truly a human being here synchronistically working together. Mm-hmm. And that's level 6. There's very little judgment to no judgment. There's a sheer open mind, a very relaxed mind, clear head. And so your inner wisdom and your intuition is very strong in level 6. That's why we call it intuitive listening.
Okay. So talk more about this style of listening then.
Yeah. So when you're in that space of level 6, you're truly present in that moment. And so when you're present, you are listening to the other person with such a pure, open mind that you have no bias coming in. You have no judgment that, what they're saying is right or wrong. You're simply open and receptive to what the person is saying. And when you're in that space of sheer presence, the other person feels truly heard. They can feel the energy of no judgment. They can feel that really open, receptive space. So they continue to share whatever it is that they're wanting to share with you. Mm-hmm. And you get more to work with as a result. because they're continuing to share whatever is coming for them that they think would be useful based on your unconditional, open, responsive place that you're being in that moment, of who you're being.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really powerful connection that's taking place. And in that space, sheer brilliance can arise. You can have incredible breakthroughs in, a problem you were trying to solve together, or an issue that's been on, outstanding for some time and you just can't get it resolved. I mean, that's where it occurs.
Yeah. So let me ask you to do this. As you describe it, it sounds wonderful. It also sounds somewhat ethereal or a little out there. And I wonder if you can bring it down to the level of the business world, because it is practical as well. The non-judgment or the non-bias, it's not necessarily related to someone's feelings. It could be related to what happened last week, or in that meeting the other day, or in the email that I just got.
Yeah, it's a good point. And it is so simple in reality. However, it's not easy in our current day-to-day operations. Mm-hmm. So that's what happens is most of us, I know I do, I come into a conversation with a particular person. Many times I'm coming into that conversation with a previous judgment of what they did last time. So especially in a business context. So I'm walking into a meeting and there's a group of people talking, and one of them I had a big disagreement with last week. And so I'm already coming in ready to defend when I see this person. They haven't even opened their mouth. Yeah. And I'm already, on the defensive. And it's only because I'm not present. I'm back in the past, replaying the event that occurred last time. Mm-hmm. And so that's taking me out of that intuitive listening state and taking me back into past, which is a level 1 victim state or a level 2 fighter state to get ready to defend, even though nothing yet has transpired for me to defend. So that's, again, noticing that I'm not present. My mind is back in the past. So as we practice this type of listening, and the reason to practice this type of listening is because of the power it holds. It can have you be much more effective and more productive with every interaction you have from this moment forward, the more you practice it.
Yeah.
So what that looks like is putting aside any previous conversations you may have had with that individual, putting aside any bias or prejudgment you may have given your whether personal experience with them or something you heard from somebody else about them. Because that's also how we get biased, mm-hmm. not just from our own experience. And so what that means then, as I'm talking to this individual, I'm not mental multitasking. And that means my mind isn't mentally going in many different directions at one time. It's practicing staying focused and present in what this person is saying right now. And that means truly listening with curiosity. Listening with practicing no judgment. So if something pops up in my mind while this person is speaking that has me start to get ready to defend or start to have me contradict what they're saying.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to let them know that what they're saying really isn't true, and that's not my experience, and that's not what I believe. It's just now mental chatter going on. So now I'm not, whatever they've been saying since I've mentally been preparing for my response, I haven't heard.
Right. So just, I was thinking as you were talking about how some of the different energy levels relate to listening, my past experience with someone might cause me to be defensive or go down to level 1 before I even hear what they have to say.
Right.
It occurred to me that if I want to partner with someone in level 5, I can't do that without listening, because if I don't know what's going on with them, how can we come to an agreement that benefits both parties.
Exactly. And that's where the power is in level 6 listening, or intuitive listening, or deep listening is many ways to call it. And it is because you want to get to that level 5 space with this other person to co-create strong agreements that have a high likelihood of success. And we've talked quite a bit about co-creating agreements in other podcasts, and that's the work I do with clients each and every day, is moving into clear agreements. So whenever a client comes to me and they're frustrated with their boss, or frustrated with a colleague, or frustrated with their spouse, the first thing I ask them is, what agreement are they not honoring? Mm-hmm. And as my coach says to me, the same thing when I go to him with the similar complaints. And each of my clients says, well, I didn't really have an agreement because I didn't think I needed one. Okay, well, that's something to notice, number one. And number two, look at creating, because you're clearly, it's not working for you. You're frustrated. You're not moving forward. So when agreements are not clearly co-created or holding up, I should say, that's because in that moment when you were creating it, there was not listening going on. Mm-hmm. You were so clear on what you wanted this person to agree to that you truly didn't listen to what they were saying they were willing to do or not do. Mm-hmm. So that's the other aspect of the listening. It's to help you and help the other person create a strong agreement on the front end so that you don't have frustration and disappointment when it doesn't hold up. And truly, the only reason it won't hold up is because you rushed through it when you were creating it together. And one or two of you were not truly heard.
Right. And that could be on either side of that,
sure,
of the equation, where the listening isn't happening, or on both sides.
Exactly. So it could be I'm the one making the request, the clear request. And I ask the other person, so how does that work for you? And they say, oh, that's fine. Well, that's an indication to me that they didn't truly hear what I'm asking. Mm-hmm. Because I'm not just asking if it's fine. I asked, how's that going to work for you? Like, truly, how's that going to work for you? Are you going to be able to do it? It's all in that one question. So there's more to that one question than just the words that I said. And that's where strong listening, deep listening comes in, when you're both really connected and honest with each other. That, that doesn't work for me. Let me tell you why. And you truly listen to why it doesn't work for them, and see what other idea you can come up with that would help move you both to a clear agreement.
Yeah.
So it's really powerful. The aspect of it that tends to occur is, as we are so used to our instant feedback society, with our digital age, with technology, with all the pings and dings and distractions that are occurring in any conversation that's taking place. Mm-hmm. It's a real art and a practice to master to this art of listening. And it's owning it when I didn't hear what they said, and not pretending I heard what they said, but owning that.
Right.
And saying, what, I got distracted for a minute there with, that card that just went by. Can you repeat that so that I can really capture it? Because what you're saying is important to me.
Yeah.
That's owning it. It's being transparent about it. And it's getting back in connection with each other again.
Yeah.
So it's what we do. Our minds are so powerful. And they're constantly fluctuating from past to present, or past to future, coming out of this present moment. And it's because of all the physical multitasking distractions that are out there, and the mental multitasking, which is a little bit under the surface and less visible. Mm-hmm. So it's a practice, a real practice.
Right. So I think as I'm hearing you talk about this, I can really see this whole matter of level 6 listening, intuitive listening, falling into the context of a number of things we've talked about on the podcast where you can be more effective, keep things moving forward, not have frustrations because you're truly listening and you're forming clear co-created agreements with people. I could see it fitting into the context of the trust model, where if people feel like I've actually heard what they said, how much more will they trust my response then, you know? So I think there's a lot there, and we can develop that in our next podcast and really put these things into context. But for the rest of this podcast, maybe we can focus a little bit more on some of the practical details of this practice of listening. You mentioned the physical and mental multitasking, you know, notifications popping up on your phone, emails coming in, cars driving by. I'm hungry. What do I want to eat later? There's so many things that can distract. So do you have any practical tips on how we can deal with those sorts of things?
Yeah, definitely. And again, it's being kind to yourself when you are distracted. That's what happens as part of the human experience. So it's gently coming back to present and saying, okay, wait a minute. I'm seeing when I have my phone sitting upright and I can see the screen and I can see when a text comes through because it pops, you know, it illuminates. That's catching my attention. I'm going to flip it over so that I can truly focus on this person in this moment. You turn off the ringers, you turn off sound, you move your computer screen facing another way so that you can truly, even if the person's not in front of you, if you're on the phone and your computer, turn your body to not have the screen right in your face as you're talking to somebody on the phone. Mm-hmm. I mean, little things like that. The other thing that I haven't touched yet is interrupting the other person before they're finished. And that's a practice. So if you catch yourself, you know, you continuously interrupt the person before they finish, stop it.
Yeah.
Just stop it. Right? And just put your hand over your mouth and say, oh, wait, okay, I'll let you finish. Sorry about that. And again, that's a practice. And you'll get better and better at it the more you notice it. And so because I've had that habit of interrupting people, and I still do it, you know, because I get so excited and I want to share what's going on in my mind based on what they just said, because I have some ideas about it.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I've interrupted their flow. I want to practice letting them finish. And then when they're finished and there's a pause, that's when I can say, okay, is it okay if I share something with you? And either they'll say, no, let me, you know, I have a few more things I want to say on this. Mm-hmm. Great, keep going. Or, yeah, what do you got? So it's a way you can practice asking, you know, are you finished with that? Is it okay if I share my thoughts on it? If you're afraid you're going to lose your thoughts and you really want to let them finish, jot it down. Mm-hmm. Just jot a word down to remind yourself. So especially in business meetings, you know, you want to allow the presenter or the person delivering the message to finish completely.
Right.
Many times I found when I'm presenting with companies and groups and people want to interrupt and ask me a question, it's usually in what I'm going to say in the upcoming slides or, the upcoming sentences that were getting ready to come out of my mouth. So it's just, again, a respectful professional courtesy to practice not interrupting. And what you find is that person, again, feels heard. They feel respected. They feel that you're seeing them as an equal in that moment, that you don't know better than they do about what's going to come out of their mouth next. It's really a beautiful way to practice professionalism and professional courtesy, and also the human connection, to stay connected with others.
And practically speaking, when you interrupt, you think that you got what someone was about to say, mm-hmm. but you may not have. And actually you don't know because you didn't let them finish. Kind of like jumping the gun on a game show and hitting the buzzer. Then you don't know what the question is and you have to answer.
Right, exactly. And you see that all the time. And in that context, yeah, it's just fun. Well, in a business context, especially if you're a manager or boss of someone and you didn't let them finish and you inserted your thoughts in the middle, they, out of trained courtesy for not to be insubordinate, will just let you then take it from there. And what it's done is stifled the creativity of the entire group in that moment. And it's just not as useful. It's not bad or wrong. It's just not as useful as getting the full impact and the full benefit of what that person wanted to share and working with all of that versus just part of it.
Yeah. So it's really a practice then. And I like what you said, not to, when we notice our mind wandering, we shouldn't beat ourselves up about it. It's just part of the nature of the human mind and a very fast-paced world we live in, that our mind is going in a lot of different directions at once. But we can practice and develop a habit of listening in this kind of way. And I appreciate all the practical tips that you've brought up.
Yeah, and when I work with clients, we work over a period of time because it is a practice with a coach helping you or a colleague helping you. So if you don't have a coach, you can ask one of your colleagues, hey, if you catch me interrupting you, ask me to stop it. Or in a meeting, if you see me interrupting someone in the meeting, gently touch my arm. That's the signal, or whatever it might be, table. Right? You develop a signal. Yeah. And that way you can have, help each other continue to strengthen that muscle of listening. Because it's just what it is. It's like a muscle that you work out at a gym. If you just don't work at it, it's going to atrophy and it's going to weaken. Same with listening. It's a practice and a skill that strengthens the more you do it. And it becomes more natural, so it's a new habit, a new way of being.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Sherry. This has been good.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you, Phil.
Like I said, I appreciate the practical aspects of how to apply this and practice this kind of listening to develop that good habit of non-judgmental, intuitive listening, level 6 listening. But I think even more inspiring than that is seeing kind of the context of what that can produce, where an environment where we're not stifling creativity, we're partnering together with people to co-create strong agreements, where we're clear on both sides, both parties have been heard, we're making that human connection and building trust. That's inspiring. I would want to practice something that develops that kind of work environment.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for listening today to the Sherry Welsh Coaching Podcast. I hope you'll join us for our next episode, where we plan to develop this matter of listening and put it into the context of creating strong agreements and developing higher levels of trust. Be sure to subscribe to the Sherry Welsh Coaching Podcast. You can find it on iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, and other podcast directories. For Sherry Welsh today, this is Phil Johnson. Thanks again for listening.